Close your eyes and imagine a world where the monsoon winds carry not just rain, but the whispers of an empire that never crumbled. Picture vast cities where golden spires pierce the clouds, where scholars debate beneath marble arches that have stood unbroken for 3,000 years. Envision a civilization so advanced, so enduring, that its influence shaped every corner of our modern world. This is not fantasy, dear listener. This is the story of what might have been if ancient India had never fallen, if the great empires of the subcontinent had weathered every storm and emerged stronger with each passing century. Welcome to History for Sleep, where we journey through the shadows of what was and the shimmering possibilities of what could have been. I'm your guide through these twilight realms of history, and tonight we embark on perhaps our most ambitious voyage yet. We stand at the crossroads of time itself, where the threads of destiny weave patterns that could reshape everything we know about our world. But before we drift into this alternate timeline, we must first understand what we lost. The Indian subcontinent, that diamond-shaped jewel suspended between the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, was once home to civilizations that made Rome look like a village and made Greece seem young. From the mysterious Indus Valley cities with their perfect drainage systems to the golden age of the Guptas, from the architectural marvels of the Cholas to the astronomical precision of ancient Ujjain, India was not just a land of kingdoms. It was the beating heart of human innovation, the wellspring from which flowed mathematics, philosophy, medicine, and art that would illuminate the entire world. Yet history, as we know it, tells a different tale. Wave after wave of invasions, centuries of colonial domination, and the gradual eclipse of what was once the world's most prosperous civilization. But what if those invasions had failed? What if the great libraries of Nalanda had never burned? What if the maritime networks of the Cholas had continued to dominate the Indian Ocean for centuries more? What if the scientific revolution that began in ancient India had never been interrupted? Tonight, we explore a timeline where the subcontinent's golden thread never broke, where innovation continued unabated, where the wisdom of the ancients grew into technologies that would astound even our modern world. This is not merely an exercise in wishful thinking. Every thread we follow is grounded in the remarkable achievements that ancient India actually accomplished, extrapolated forward through the lens of historical possibility. Picture, if you will, the year 1200 CE in our alternate timeline. While Europe struggles through what historians call the High Middle Ages, the Indian subcontinent thrives under a confederation of advanced kingdoms that learned long ago that cooperation yields greater rewards than constant warfare. The Rajput kingdoms of the northwest have not fallen to Muhammad of Ghor. Instead, they've adapted, evolved, and incorporated the best military innovations of their would-be conquerors while maintaining their cultural identity. The secret lies in what never happened in our timeline, a crucial moment in 1192 CE when Prithviraj Chauhan, the last Hindu ruler of Delhi, faces Muhammad of Ghor at the Second Battle of Tarain. In our world, Prithviraj fell, opening the gates for centuries of Islamic conquest. But in this alternate timeline, a different choice echoes through the centuries. Prithviraj, instead of allowing personal pride to cloud his judgment, accepts the alliance offered by his rival, Jaishand of Kanauj. United, the Rajput Confederacy presents an unbreakable wall against the Urid invasion. But this is more than just a military victory. It represents a fundamental shift in Indian political consciousness. The kingdoms of the subcontinent, seeing the strength of unity, begin to form what historians in this timeline call the Bharata Sammelana, the Great Indian Confederation. Unlike the loose alliances of our historical timeline, this confederation operates on principles borrowed from the ancient Arthashastra of Kautilya, but adapted for a multi-kingdom reality. Imagine councils where representatives from the Chola Maritime Empire in the south debate trade policies with mountain kings from Kashmir, where scholars from the universities of Bengal share mathematical innovations with the astronomers of Gujarat. This is not a single monolithic empire, but rather a network of interconnected states that share knowledge, resources, and mutual defense while maintaining their distinct cultural identities. The technological implications of this unbroken development are staggering. In our timeline, the decimal system, the concept of zero, algebra, and trigonometry all emerged from Indian mathematical traditions. Steel production reached levels of sophistication that European smiths couldn't match until the Industrial Revolution. Surgical techniques described in the Sushruta Samhita were performing cataract operations and plastic surgery when European medicine was still mired in superstition. Now imagine these traditions continuing uninterrupted for another 800 years. By our equivalent of the Renaissance, Indian mathematicians in this timeline have developed calculus 3 centuries before Newton and Leibniz. The astronomical observatories that dotted the subcontinent have mapped the heavens with precision that makes Galileo's telescope seem primitive. The great universities, never destroyed, have become centres of learning that draw scholars from across Asia, the Middle East, and even distant Europe. But perhaps most remarkably, the maritime traditions of ancient India have evolved into something unprecedented in our timeline. The Chola navy, which in our history dominated the Indian Ocean from the 9th to the 13th centuries, continues its expansion in this alternate world. By 1400 CE, Indian trading posts and colonies stretch from Madagascar to Indonesia, from the Persian Gulf to the ports of East Africa. These are not merely trading outposts, but centres of cultural exchange where Indian mathematical and scientific knowledge mingles with local traditions. In the great port city of Kilwa, off the coast of present-day Tanzania, Indian engineers work alongside Swahili architects to create harbour systems that can accommodate the massive ships of the continuing Chola fleet. In the Spice Islands of what we call Indonesia, Indian agricultural techniques increase crop yields while local maritime knowledge enhances Indian navigation. The ripple effects cascade through history. When European explorers finally develop the technology and motivation to venture beyond their coastal waters, they don't find a series of isolated civilizations ripe for conquest. Instead, they encounter a sophisticated network of Indian-influenced states stretching across the Indian Ocean, backed by technological capabilities that match and often exceed their own. Christopher Columbus, seeking a route to the Indies in 1492, doesn't stumble upon the Americas through accident and desperation. In this timeline, Indian maritime charts have already mapped the major ocean currents and wind patterns. Indian trading missions, following the same mathematical principles that guided their ancestors' astronomical observations, have calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy. Some historians in this alternate timeline suggest that Indian navigators may have reached the Americas decades before Columbus was even born, though this remains a subject of scholarly debate. The implications for the Americas themselves are profound. Indigenous civilizations of the New World, instead of facing catastrophic population collapse from European diseases, encounter Indian traders who, following ancient Ayurvedic traditions, understand disease transmission and quarantine procedures. The exchange is still transformative, but it's an exchange between technological equals rather than conquest and colonization. Back in the subcontinent itself, the continuous development of Indian science and technology has created wonders that seem almost magical to our modern eyes. The ancient Indian understanding of metallurgy, which produced the famous rust-resistant iron pillar of Delhi, has evolved into alloys and materials that won't be discovered in our timeline until the 20th century. The mathematical traditions that gave us the decimal system have blossomed into computational methods that European scholars struggle to comprehend. In the great library university of Nalanda, which in this timeline has grown to accommodate over 100,000 students, scholars work with calculating devices that operate on principles similar to our modern computers, though powered by ingenious mechanical systems rather than electricity. The architectural achievements are equally breathtaking. The temple complexes of this alternate India don't merely reach toward the heavens, they seem to touch them. Using engineering principles derived from ancient texts, but refined through centuries of uninterrupted development, Indian architects create structures that dwarf anything in our historical record. The great Temple of Konark, rather than falling into ruin, becomes the prototype for a new generation of solar temples that actually harness the sun's energy for practical purposes. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this alternate timeline is not the technological advancement, but the philosophical and social evolution that accompanies it. The ancient Indian concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, has grown from a philosophical ideal into a practical governing principle for the Confederation. Religious tolerance, always a complex reality in the historical subcontinent, has evolved into something approaching genuine pluralism. The various kingdoms of the Confederation host not only the traditional Indian religions, but welcome Islamic scholars, Christian missionaries, and Buddhist monks from across Asia. Rather than religious conflict, this diversity becomes a source of intellectual ferment that drives further innovation. The social implications are equally profound. The ancient Indian educational traditions, which in our timeline produce universities like Nalanda and Vikramashila, have evolved into a comprehensive system that educates not just the elite, but creates pathways for advancement based on merit rather than birth. The guild systems that governed ancient Indian commerce have developed into sophisticated networks that manage trade across continents while ensuring that wealth circulates throughout society rather than concentrating in the hands of a few. Women in this alternate timeline enjoy rights and opportunities that won't appear in our European societies until the modern era. Ancient Indian texts like the Arthashastra mentioned women in positions of authority, and this tradition has grown rather than diminished. By our equivalent of the 15th century, women serve as administrators, scholars, and even military commanders in the Confederation. The legal system, based on ancient dharmic principles but adapted for a multicultural confederation, has developed concepts of justice and individual rights that prefigure many modern legal innovations. Rather than the rigid caste hierarchies that ossified in our timeline, this alternate India has evolved more flexible social structures that maintain cultural identity while allowing for social mobility. As we drift deeper into this alternate timeline, the differences become more pronounced. By what we would call the 16th century, the Indian Confederation has become the dominant global power not through military conquest, but through technological superiority and economic influence. Indian universities draw students from across the known world. Indian trading companies operate with principles of corporate governance that won't appear in European commercial law for centuries. The printing press, when it arrives from China, doesn't merely reproduce existing texts. Indian scholars immediately grasp its revolutionary potential and begin producing technical manuals, philosophical treatises, and literary works in quantities that create a genuine information revolution. The ancient oral traditions that preserved Indian knowledge for millennia are finally committed to paper, but in forms that make them accessible to scholars worldwide. But this technological and social progress doesn't come without challenges. The very success of the Confederation creates new problems that test the wisdom of its leaders. How do you maintain cultural authenticity while embracing innovation? How do you govern a network of kingdoms that spans thousands of miles and dozens of distinct cultures? How do you balance traditional values with the disruptive force of rapid technological change? These questions drive the great philosophical debates of this alternate timeline. In the universities of Bengal, scholars develop new forms of logic that can handle the complexity of multivariable problems. In the courts of the Deccan, legal theorists create frameworks for international law that govern trade disputes across continents. In the temples of Tamil Nadu, priests and mathematicians collaborate to create calendars that can coordinate activities across the Confederation's vast territories. The environmental implications of this continuous development also present unique challenges. Ancient Indian texts like the Arthashastra contain sophisticated understanding of resource management and environmental protection. In this alternate timeline, these principles have evolved into comprehensive environmental policies that prevent the kind of ecological destruction that accompanies rapid industrialization in our world. Indian agricultural techniques, refined over centuries of uninterrupted development, produce higher yields while actually improving soil quality. The ancient Indian practice of crop rotation has evolved into sophisticated agricultural cycles that maintain biodiversity while feeding the Confederation's growing population. Water management systems, based on principles laid down in ancient texts, but enhanced with centuries of engineering innovation, prevent both floods and droughts while maintaining the health of river ecosystems. As we approach what would be our modern era, this alternate Indian civilization stands as a testament to what continuous development can achieve. The scientific method, which in our timeline emerged in Europe during the 17th century, has been a cornerstone of Indian intellectual tradition for over a millennium. The technological revolution that we associate with the Industrial Revolution has been a gradual, sustainable process rather than a sudden, disruptive transformation. The social structures that emerge from this continuous development are perhaps even more remarkable than the technological achievements. The ancient Indian concept of the Guru-Shishya tradition has evolved into comprehensive mentorship systems that ensure knowledge passes not just from generation to generation, but across cultural and geographic boundaries. The merchant guilds that once governed Indian commerce have become sophisticated organizations that balance profit with social responsibility in ways that prefigure modern concepts of corporate social responsibility. But as we stand at this point in our alternate timeline, we must remember that this is only the beginning of our journey. The Indian Confederation we've described represents just the foundation of what becomes possible when human potential develops uninterrupted by conquest and colonization. The true wonders of this alternate world lie ahead, in the centuries where this advanced civilization encounters the rest of a world that has developed along very different lines. What happens when the scientific revolution that began in ancient India meets the artistic achievements of Renaissance Europe? How does a society that has spent centuries perfecting the balance between tradition and innovation respond to the challenges of global interaction? What new forms of government, technology, and human organization emerge when the wisdom of the ancients meets the energy of continuous progress? These questions will guide us as we continue our journey through this alternate timeline, where the fall of ancient India never came, and where the golden thread of civilization stretches unbroken from the Indus Valley to a future we can barely imagine. The story we've begun tonight is not just about what might have been, but about the infinite potential that lies within human civilization when it's allowed to flourish without interruption. As the gentle currents of time carry us deeper into this alternate reality, we arrive at a moment that would reshape not just India, but the entire trajectory of human civilization. The year is 1498 in our timeline, and Vasco da Gama rounds the Cape of Good Hope, seeking the legendary riches of the Indies. But in our alternate world, what he finds when he reaches the Malabar coast is not a collection of fragmented kingdoms ripe for exploitation, but representatives of the most sophisticated civilization on Earth. Picture the scene as da Gama's weathered ships approach the port of Calicut. Instead of the modest harbour he encountered in our timeline, he sees a magnificent city that stretches along the coastline like a jewelled necklace. Towers of white marble rise from carefully planned districts, their surfaces inlaid with geometric patterns that seem to shift and dance in the tropical sunlight. The harbour itself is an engineering marvel, with floating docks that adjust to the tides and massive stone breakwaters that create calm waters even during the monsoon storms. But it's not just the physical grandeur that astounds the Portuguese explorer. As his ships are guided into port by Indian vessels that move with impossible precision, da Gama realizes he's witnessing navigation technology that surpasses anything in European waters. These Indian ships don't rely solely on wind and current. They're powered by ingenious mechanical systems that have evolved from centuries of uninterrupted maritime development. The Indian harbour master who greets da Gama speaks not just Malayalam and Sanskrit, but fluent Arabic, Persian, and even fragments of Portuguese learned from previous trading encounters. This is no provincial official, but a representative of a confederation that has been conducting international diplomacy for centuries. The maps he shows da Gama are more accurate than anything in European possession, depicting ocean currents, wind patterns, and seasonal variations with mathematical precision that won't be matched in our timeline until the age of scientific navigation. What da Gama doesn't initially comprehend is that he's not discovering India. India has been aware of European maritime activities for years through its extensive network of trading posts and diplomatic contacts. The Confederation's intelligence service evolved from ancient Chandragupta's spy networks described in the Arthashastra, has been tracking European naval developments with the same systematic attention they've applied to Chinese innovations and Arab technological advances. In the great council chambers of the Confederation, Indian scholars have been debating European intentions long before the first Portuguese ship appeared on the horizon. These debates, conducted in universities that house libraries dwarfing anything in medieval Europe, draw on philosophical traditions that have grappled with questions of cultural contact and technological exchange for over a millennium. The Indian response to European arrival reflects this deeper wisdom. Rather than viewing the Portuguese as either gods or demons, as happened in our timeline's encounter with the Americas, the Indian Confederation recognizes them as representatives of a younger civilization with certain technological capabilities, but lacking the sophisticated social and intellectual frameworks that centuries of uninterrupted development have provided. The negotiations that followed da Gama's arrival set the tone for a completely different pattern of East-West interaction. The Portuguese, expecting to dictate terms to what they assumed would be primitive kingdoms, find themselves facing negotiators who understand European motivations better than the Europeans understand them. Indian diplomats, trained in traditions that stretch back to ancient Mauryan diplomatic protocols, approach these discussions with a long-term perspective that encompasses not just immediate commercial interests, but the welfare of future generations. The trading agreements that emerge from these negotiations reflect this sophisticated approach. Rather than the exploitative relationships that characterized European colonialism in our timeline, these become partnerships between technological equals. European innovations in metallurgy and navigation are exchanged for Indian advances in mathematics, medicine, and agricultural science. But more importantly, the agreements establish principles of mutual respect and cultural autonomy that prevent the kind of cultural destruction that marked European expansion in our world. The impact on Europe itself is immediate and profound. When da Gama returns to Lisbon, his ships are laden not just with spices and precious goods, but with Indian texts that will revolutionize European intellectual life. Mathematical treatises that extend far beyond anything known in European universities, medical texts that describe surgical procedures and pharmaceutical preparations of unprecedented sophistication, and astronomical works that reveal the inadequacy of European understanding of celestial mechanics. The printing presses of Venice and Paris, which in our timeline spread Renaissance humanism across Europe, now disseminate Indian knowledge that accelerates European development by centuries. The scientific revolution that we associate with figures like Galileo and Newton begins 200 years early, driven by Indian mathematical and observational techniques that European scholars struggle to comprehend but eagerly adopt. But the most profound changes occur not in Europe, but in the broader pattern of global development. The Indian Confederation, rather than being disrupted by European contact, uses this encounter as an opportunity to extend its influence into new regions. Indian trading missions following the wake of European explorers established diplomatic and commercial relationships with civilizations that European colonizers would have destroyed. In the Americas, Indian merchants arrived not as conquerors but as partners in exchange. The sophisticated medical knowledge they carry, evolved from ancient Ayurvedic traditions, prevents the demographic catastrophes that devastated indigenous populations in our timeline. Instead of the 90% population decline that marked European colonization, the Americas experience a gradual integration into a global trading network that preserves indigenous cultures while introducing new technologies and ideas. The Aztec Empire, rather than falling to Cortés, finds itself in diplomatic contact with Indian representatives who understand the complexities of managing multi-ethnic confederations. The Inca, masters of engineering and administration, exchange knowledge with Indian experts in hydraulic engineering and urban planning. The result is not conquest and destruction, but a gradual evolution of American civilizations that maintains their essential character while incorporating beneficial innovations. Meanwhile, in Africa, the pattern of European slave trading that devastated entire regions in our timeline encounters systematic Indian opposition. The Confederation's moral philosophy, rooted in concepts of universal human dignity that evolved from ancient dharmic principles, provides both the ethical framework and the economic alternatives that make slavery unnecessary. Indian agricultural techniques increase African crop yields, Indian medical knowledge improves population health, and Indian commercial practices create wealth without exploitation. The great African kingdoms of Mali, Songhai, and Ethiopia find themselves part of an expanding network of civilized states, rather than victims of European predation. The trans-Saharan trade routes that had connected Africa to the Islamic world for centuries now extend eastward to Indian ports, creating commercial relationships that benefit all participants, rather than enriching a few at the expense of many. Back in the Indian subcontinent itself, contact with the wider world accelerates developments that were already underway. The mathematical schools of Kerala, which in our timeline developed infinite series and calculus concepts centuries before their European discovery, now share their knowledge with scholars from across the globe. The result is a mathematical revolution that transforms not just pure mathematics, but its practical applications in engineering, astronomy, and what we would recognize as early physics. The great observatories of Ujjain and Varanasi, already the most sophisticated astronomical facilities in the world, begin incorporating observations from Indian trading posts across the globe. For the first time in human history, a single civilization has access to astronomical data from every continent and every ocean. The maps of the heavens they produce are so accurate that they won't be surpassed in our timeline until the space age. But perhaps the most remarkable development is the emergence of what Indian philosophers call the universal dharma, an ethical and legal framework that can govern interactions between vastly different cultures while respecting the autonomy of each. This concept, evolved from ancient Indian ideas about cosmic order and moral law, provides the intellectual foundation for what becomes history's first truly global civilization. The universal Dharma doesn't impose Indian values on other cultures, but rather identifies common principles that all advanced societies share: the importance of knowledge, the value of human dignity, the necessity of environmental stewardship, and the benefits of peaceful cooperation. These principles, refined through centuries of managing the diverse confederation of Indian kingdoms, prove surprisingly adaptable to global application. By what we would call the early 17th century, this Indian-centered global network encompasses most of the civilized world. European kingdoms, rather than embarking on colonial adventures, find themselves junior partners in a trading system that spans continents. The wealth that flows through this network doesn't concentrate in a few European capitals, but circulates through a vast web of interconnected cities, from Lisbon to Jakarta, from Timbuktu to Cusco. The technological implications of this global knowledge sharing are staggering. Steam power, which in our timeline emerged from European attempts to solve mining problems, develops 2 centuries early from Indian hydraulic engineering combined with Chinese metallurgy and European mechanical innovation. But because this development occurs within the framework of Indian environmental philosophy, it doesn't lead to the ecological devastation that marked industrialization in our world. The factories that begin appearing across the Confederation in the 1600s operate on principles that balance productivity with sustainability. Ancient Indian concepts of renewable resources and circular production cycles, refined through centuries of managing the monsoon-dependent agriculture of the subcontinent, provide the framework for industrial processes that actually improve rather than degrade the environment. The social implications are equally profound. The caste system that ossified in our timeline's India faces constant pressure from the Confederation's commitment to merit-based advancement and cultural exchange. While traditional social structures don't disappear overnight, they evolve into more flexible arrangements that maintain cultural identity while allowing for social mobility and intercultural marriage. Women in this alternate India enjoy opportunities that won't appear in our European societies until the modern era. The ancient Indian traditions that produced figures like Gargi and Lopamudra, female philosophers and scholars, have evolved into comprehensive educational systems that train women for roles in administration, commerce, and scholarship. By the 17th century, several of the Confederation's constituent kingdoms are ruled by queens whose authority derives not from inheritance alone, but from demonstrated competence in statecraft. The legal system that governs this vast network draws on the best principles from every participating culture: Indian dharmic concepts of justice, Islamic principles of commercial law, Chinese administrative practices, and even indigenous American concepts of environmental stewardship combine into a legal framework that can handle the complexity of global civilization while protecting individual and cultural rights. But as we reach this point in our alternate timeline, we begin to see the emergence of challenges that test even this advanced civilization. The very success of the Indian-centered global network creates new problems that require new solutions. How do you maintain cultural diversity while promoting global unity? How do you manage technological development that occurs at an unprecedented pace? How do you govern a civilization that spans every continent and encompasses every human culture? These questions drive the great intellectual movements of the 17th and 18th centuries in this alternate timeline. In the universities of Nalanda and Vikramashila, now grown into vast complexes that house scholars from every corner of the globe, new forms of philosophy emerge that grapple with the challenges of universal civilization. In the trading houses of Calicut and Pulliket, commercial theorists develop economic principles that can manage global trade, while ensuring that wealth benefits all participants rather than concentrating in the hands of a few. The environmental challenges are particularly acute. Even with the Confederation's sophisticated understanding of ecological balance, the sheer scale of global civilization begins to strain natural systems in ways that ancient texts never anticipated. The response to these challenges drives innovations in what we would recognize as environmental engineering, renewable energy, and sustainable agriculture that won't appear in our timeline until the 21st century. As we prepare to drift deeper into this alternate future, we see a world that has achieved something unprecedented in human history: a global civilization that maintains cultural diversity while promoting universal prosperity, that advances technology while protecting the environment, and that expands human knowledge while preserving ancient wisdom. The foundation laid by the unbroken development of ancient India has become the cornerstone of a human future that surpasses our wildest dreams, while remaining grounded in principles of justice, sustainability, and respect for the infinite potential that lies within every human culture. The story continues to unfold, each century bringing new wonders and new challenges, as this remarkable civilization navigates the complexities of global leadership while staying true to the dharmic principles that guided its ancient founders. What emerges is not just an alternate history, but a vision of what human civilization might achieve when wisdom guides power, when cooperation replaces conquest, and when the eternal values of truth and righteousness illuminate the path forward into an uncertain but promising future. The monsoon winds that sweep across the subcontinent in this alternate timeline carry more than just life-giving rain. They carry the whispers of innovations that will reshape human understanding itself. As we drift into the 18th century of this unbroken Indian civilization, we witness transformations that would seem miraculous to our world, yet flow naturally from centuries of accumulated wisdom. In the great city of Pataliputra, now expanded into a metropolis that houses over 2 million souls, the ancient Mauryan principles of urban planning have evolved into something unprecedented in human history. The city doesn't sprawl chaotically like the industrial centres of our timeline, but grows in carefully planned spirals that mirror the mathematical principles found in ancient Sanskrit texts. Each district is a self-contained ecosystem, with markets, workshops, schools, and temples arranged according to principles that balance human needs with natural harmony. The streets themselves are marvels of engineering that would astound even our modern urban planners. Instead of the muddy lanes that characterize cities in our 18th century, Pataliputra's thoroughfares are paved with a material that seems to glow with inner light. This substance, developed by Indian alchemists who continued the traditions mentioned in ancient texts, combines crushed shells from the Bay of Bengal with a mineral compound that naturally purifies the air and provides gentle illumination during the dark hours. But it's the transportation system that truly reveals the sophistication of this alternate civilization. Drawing on hydraulic principles that ancient Indian engineers used for irrigation, the city's designers have created a network of water channels that power vehicles throughout the metropolis. These vessels, elegant boats that glide silently through the urban waterways, carry citizens from district to district without the noise, pollution, or chaos that marks transportation in our timeline cities. The power source for this remarkable system comes from an innovation that combines ancient Indian understanding of monsoon patterns with mathematical principles that won't be discovered in our world until centuries later. Massive water wheels, their designs based on temple carvings that decorated the great complexes of the south, capture the energy of seasonal floods and store it in underground reservoirs. During the dry months, this stored energy powers not just transportation, but the workshops, schools, and administrative centres that keep the Confederation functioning. In the realm of medicine, the continuous development of Ayurvedic traditions has produced healing arts that border on the miraculous. The ancient texts that describe surgical procedures and pharmaceutical preparations have evolved into a comprehensive medical system that understands the human body in ways our timeline won't achieve until the modern era. In the medical colleges of Takshashila and Nalanda, students from across the known world study diagnostic techniques that can identify diseases from subtle changes in pulse, complexion, and breathing patterns. The surgical theatres of these institutions perform operations that European physicians won't attempt for centuries. Cataract removal, kidney stone extraction, and even primitive forms of cardiac surgery are routine procedures, performed with instruments so finely crafted they seem to cut through tissue without causing trauma. The knowledge that guides these procedures comes not just from ancient texts, but from centuries of systematic observation and experimentation that follows the same rigorous methods Indian mathematicians applied to their astronomical calculations. But perhaps most remarkably, Indian physicians have developed what they call the science of life extension, techniques that allow people to maintain health and vitality far beyond what seems possible in our timeline. These methods, based on ancient practices but refined through centuries of careful study, combine dietary principles, physical exercises, meditation techniques, and pharmaceutical preparations in ways that slow the aging process itself. The results are visible throughout the Confederation. Scholars continue their research well into their hundreds, their minds sharp and their bodies vigorous. Craftsmen perfect their arts across multiple generations of active work, Political leaders govern with the wisdom that comes from decades of experience combined with the energy of extended youth. The average lifespan in this alternate India approaches what our world won't achieve until the 21st century, and the quality of that extended life far exceeds anything in our historical experience. This longevity has profound implications for the development of knowledge and culture. In our timeline, human progress is constantly interrupted by death, each generation forced to rediscover what the previous generation learned. But in this alternate India, master craftsmen, scholars and artists continue their work for centuries, accumulating expertise and passing on knowledge in ways that accelerate human development beyond anything we can imagine. The great libraries of Nalanda have grown into repositories of knowledge that dwarf anything in our historical record. But these aren't just collections of static texts. They're living institutions where scholars who have spent centuries mastering their subjects continue to push the boundaries of human understanding. Mathematical theorems that took European scholars generations to develop are refined and extended by Indian mathematicians who have had centuries to contemplate their implications. In the realm of astronomy, this extended scholarship has produced observations and calculations of breathtaking precision. The Great Observatory at Ujjain, continuously operated and improved for over a millennium, has mapped the heavens with an accuracy that won't be matched in our timeline until the space age. Indian astronomers have not only calculated the precession of the equinoxes with mathematical precision, but have developed theories about the nature of stellar motion that anticipate discoveries our world won't make until the modern era. Their observations have revealed the existence of celestial phenomena that European astronomers won't detect for centuries. Double stars, variable stars, and even distant galaxies appear in Indian star catalogues, compiled through centuries of patient observation. The mathematical models they've developed to explain these phenomena demonstrate an understanding of cosmic mechanics that seems almost supernatural to visitors from less advanced civilizations. But it's in the realm of what we might call physics that the continuous development of Indian science has produced the most startling innovations. Ancient Indian texts contained references to atomic theory, concepts of energy and matter, and principles of motion that European science won't rediscover until the modern era. In this alternate timeline, these ideas have been systematically developed through centuries of experimentation and mathematical analysis. Indian natural philosophers have developed instruments that can detect and measure forces invisible to the naked eye. Their understanding of magnetism, electricity, and what they call the subtle energies that bind all matter has led to practical applications that seem magical to foreign observers. Temples throughout the Confederation are illuminated by devices that generate light without fire, powered by principles that European visitors struggle to comprehend. The metallurgical traditions that produced the famous rust-resistant iron pillar of Delhi have evolved into techniques for creating materials with properties that won't be achieved in our timeline until the industrial age. Indian smiths work with alloys that are stronger than steel yet lighter than aluminum, metals that conduct heat and electricity with perfect efficiency, and compounds that can change their properties in response to temperature, pressure, or magnetic fields. These advanced materials have revolutionized architecture throughout the Confederation. The great temples and palaces of this alternate India don't just inspire awe through their size and beauty, but through their seemingly impossible structural properties. Towers that should collapse under their own weight stand perfectly stable, supported by frameworks of advanced alloys that distribute stress in ways that anticipate modern engineering principles. The bridges that span the great rivers of the subcontinent are marvels that visiting Europeans describe in terms borrowed from their descriptions of paradise. These structures, some stretching for miles across monsoon-swollen waterways, seem to float above the surface without visible supports. The secret lies in Indian understanding of suspension principles and advanced materials that can bear enormous loads while remaining virtually invisible from a distance. But the most remarkable architectural achievement is the great temple complex of Konark, which in this timeline has grown beyond its historical proportions into a structure that serves as both spiritual center and technological marvel. The temple's famous wheel-shaped design has been expanded into a series of interlocking circles that actually rotate in harmony with celestial movements, creating a massive mechanical calendar that tracks not just solar and lunar cycles, but the complex motions of planets and stars. This temple machine serves multiple functions that blend the spiritual and practical in ways that perfectly embody the Indian approach to knowledge. It's simultaneously a place of worship, an astronomical observatory, a center for mathematical calculation, and a power generation facility that harnesses solar energy with an efficiency that won't be matched in our timeline until the modern era. The rotating elements of the temple are covered with polished metal surfaces that focus sunlight into concentrated beams, providing both illumination and heat for the complex's various functions. But more remarkably, the temple's designers have incorporated principles of resonance and vibration that amplify the natural frequencies of the earth itself, creating what devotees describe as a constant, barely audible humming that induces states of profound meditation and spiritual insight. This blending of spiritual and technological innovation characterizes the entire Confederation's approach to development. Unlike our timeline's industrial revolution, which often came at the cost of environmental destruction and social disruption, Indian advancement occurs within frameworks that maintain harmony between human innovation and natural systems. The factories that produce the Confederation's remarkable goods don't belch smoke or poison waterways. Instead, they operate on principles derived from ancient Indian understanding of natural cycles and renewable resources. Waste products from one process become raw materials for another, creating closed-loop systems that actually improve environmental conditions rather than degrading them. The energy that powers these facilities comes from sources that seem almost mystical to foreign observers. Solar collectors based on temple architecture, water wheels that harness monsoon power, and wind devices inspired by the prayer wheels of mountain monasteries combine to provide abundant energy without environmental cost. But most remarkably, Indian engineers have learned to tap into what they call the Earth's own energy, drawing power from geological processes that our timeline won't understand until much later. This mastery of natural forces extends to agriculture, where Indian farmers achieve yields that seem impossible to visitors from other lands. The ancient techniques of crop rotation and natural fertilization have evolved into comprehensive agricultural systems that actually improve soil quality while producing abundance. Fields that have been continuously cultivated for centuries show no signs of exhaustion, but instead become more fertile with each growing season. The secret lies in Indian understanding of what they call the living soil, an approach to agriculture that treats the earth as a complex ecosystem rather than a simple growing medium. Indian farmers work with microscopic organisms, mineral cycles, and plant relationships in ways that anticipate our modern understanding of soil science by centuries. Their fields are not just sources of food, but complex biological systems that support incredible diversity, while producing the crops that feed the Confederation's growing population. The social implications of this sustainable prosperity are profound. Unlike our timeline's industrial development, which often created vast disparities between rich and poor, the Indian approach to technological advancement lifts all levels of society. The guild systems that manage traditional crafts have evolved into cooperative networks that ensure that the benefits of innovation reach every community. Villages throughout the Confederation have access to technologies and knowledge that in our timeline would be available only to the wealthy elite of major cities. Rural schools teach mathematics and natural philosophy alongside traditional crafts. Local workshops produce goods using advanced techniques that have been adapted to small-scale production. Even remote mountain communities participate in the Confederation's prosperity through trading networks that value their traditional knowledge and unique products. The legal system that governs this complex society has evolved principles of justice and individual rights that anticipate many modern legal innovations. Drawing on ancient Indian concepts of dharma, but adapted for a multicultural confederation, the law recognizes both individual autonomy and community responsibility in ways that balance personal freedom with social harmony. Women throughout the Confederation enjoy rights and opportunities that won't appear in our European societies until the modern era. Female scholars teach in the great universities, women merchants conduct business across continents, and several kingdoms within the Confederation are ruled by queens whose authority derives from demonstrated competence rather than mere inheritance. The ancient Indian traditions that honoured female wisdom and strength have evolved into comprehensive social systems that recognise the full potential of human talent regardless of gender. But perhaps most remarkably, this advanced civilization has developed what its philosophers call the art of peaceful change, methods for managing technological and social transformation without the disruption and conflict that mark progress in our timeline. Drawing on ancient Indian concepts of gradual evolution and natural harmony, the Confederation has learned to introduce innovations in ways that strengthen rather than threaten traditional cultures. When new technologies emerge from the Confederation's research centres, they're not simply imposed on society, but are carefully integrated through processes that respect local customs and individual choice. Communities have the right to adopt innovations at their own pace, and traditional ways of life are protected even as new possibilities emerge. The result is a society that experiences constant positive change without the social upheaval that characterizes rapid development in our world. This approach to change management has allowed the Confederation to maintain its essential character while adapting to new circumstances and opportunities. The dharmic principles that guided ancient Indian civilization continue to provide ethical frameworks for modern challenges, while the practical wisdom accumulated over centuries offers solutions to problems that newer civilizations struggle to address. As we observe this remarkable society at the height of its development, we see a civilization that has achieved something unprecedented in human history: the marriage of ancient wisdom with unlimited innovation, the combination of spiritual depth with material prosperity, and the integration of individual fulfillment with collective harmony. The foundation laid by the unbroken development of ancient India has blossomed into a form of human organization that seems almost too perfect to be real, yet follows logically from the principles and potentials that existed in the historical subcontinent. But as we prepare to explore the further implications of this alternate timeline, we must remember that even this advanced civilization faces challenges that test its wisdom and resilience. The very success of the Indian Confederation creates new responsibilities and new problems that require ever greater wisdom to solve. How does a civilization that has achieved near perfection continue to grow and develop? How does a society that has solved most material problems address the deeper questions of human meaning and purpose? And what happens when this advanced civilization encounters the wider world that has developed along very different lines? These questions beckon us forward into the deeper mysteries of this alternate timeline, where the achievements we've witnessed are merely the foundation for even greater wonders that emerge when human potential develops, without artificial limits or external interference. As we drift deeper into the 18th century of this unbroken civilization, we encounter developments that challenge our very understanding of what human society can achieve. The Confederation has reached a crossroads where its greatest triumph, the perfect integration of wisdom and innovation, creates questions that stretch beyond the material realm into the deepest mysteries of human existence. In the mountain kingdom of Kashmir, where ancient texts speak of gods walking among mortals, something extraordinary is taking place in the high-altitude monasteries that dot the crystalline peaks. Here, where the air is so thin that visitors from lower elevations struggle to breathe, Indian contemplatives have discovered techniques that seem to transcend the normal boundaries of human consciousness. These are not mere meditation practices, but systematic methods for exploring what they call the infinite dimensions of awareness. The monks and scholars who dedicate their lives to these practices have developed abilities that visiting Europeans describe in terms borrowed from their accounts of miracles. Through breathing techniques refined over centuries of careful experimentation, these practitioners can survive in conditions that should be lethal, remaining warm in sub-freezing temperatures without external heat, going without food or water for periods that defy biological understanding, and most remarkably entering states of consciousness that allow them to perceive and interact with reality in ways that seem to violate the laws of physics. But these aren't isolated phenomena practiced by a few mystics. The techniques developed in the mountain retreats have been systematically studied and documented by scholars who apply the same rigorous methods Indian mathematicians use for their calculations. In the great libraries of Srinagar, detailed treatises describe the physiological and psychological changes that occur during advanced contemplative practices, complete with measurements and observations that anticipate our modern understanding of neuroscience by centuries. The practical applications of this research have transformed Indian society in ways that visiting foreigners struggle to comprehend. Techniques derived from contemplative practices have enhanced the learning abilities of students throughout the Confederation, allowing them to absorb and retain knowledge at rates that seem superhuman. Master craftsmen use meditative states to achieve levels of precision and artistry that turn their work into expressions of transcendent beauty. Even merchants and administrators employ these methods to make decisions with clarity and wisdom that consistently produce beneficial results. The medical implications are equally profound. Indian physicians have discovered that certain contemplative states can accelerate healing processes, boost immunity, and even reverse what other civilizations consider irreversible diseases. The hospitals attached to the great medical colleges routinely achieve cures that European doctors would classify as miraculous, using nothing more than carefully applied combinations of herbal preparations, precise physical manipulations, and guided alterations of consciousness. These developments have created what Indian philosophers call the awakened society, a civilization where the majority of citizens possess capabilities that in other cultures would be considered supernatural. The effects ripple through every aspect of life, from farmers who can sense the optimal timing for planting and harvesting with uncanny accuracy, to architects who design buildings that seem to grow organically from their landscapes, to rulers who govern with a wisdom that anticipates the needs of their subjects generations in advance. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this awakened society is its approach to what we might call higher education. The ancient Indian concept of the guru-shishya relationship has evolved into comprehensive systems for transmitting not just knowledge, but direct experience of expanded states of consciousness. Students in the Confederation's universities don't merely study subjects, they develop the capacity to perceive and understand reality from multiple dimensions simultaneously. In the mathematical schools of Kerala, students learn to visualize complex geometric relationships in their minds with such clarity that they can solve problems that would require elaborate calculations by mental perception alone. The astronomical colleges of Gujarat train observers who can track celestial movements with their naked eyes more accurately than European astronomers using their finest instruments. The medical schools of Bengal produce physicians who can diagnose illnesses by subtle perceptions that detect disease processes before they manifest physical symptoms. This expansion of human capabilities has created new forms of art and architecture that express beauty and meaning in ways that transcend anything in our historical experience. The temples and palaces built during this period don't merely please the eye, they seem to resonate with harmonics that induce profound states of peace and clarity in all who encounter them. The sculptures and paintings adorning these structures capture not just physical appearances, but what Indian artists call the essence light that illuminates all living beings. Music and dance have evolved into art forms that serve as vehicles for transmitting states of consciousness rather than mere entertainment. The classical traditions that produced the ragas and talas of Indian music have developed into comprehensive systems for inducing specific psychological and spiritual states through sound and movement. Performances in the great cultural centres of the Confederation don't just move audiences emotionally, they create shared experiences of expanded awareness that unite communities in ways that transcend individual differences. The literary traditions that gave birth to the great Sanskrit epics have continued to flourish, producing new works that explore the implications of this awakened society. Poets and philosophers write not just about human experiences, but about the cosmic principles that govern existence itself. Their works, distributed throughout the Confederation by the advanced printing systems that have evolved from Chinese innovations, serve as both entertainment and instruction, weaving together practical wisdom with transcendent insights. But this remarkable development of human potential hasn't occurred in isolation from the Confederation's technological advancement. In fact, the two streams of progress have begun to merge in ways that create possibilities neither could achieve alone. Indian engineers working in the expanded states of consciousness developed through contemplative practices have begun to perceive the subtle energy patterns that underlie all natural phenomena. This perception has led to breakthroughs in what they call consciousness-assisted technology, devices that respond not just to mechanical controls, but to the mental states and intentions of their operators. The great water-powered transportation systems of the major cities now include vessels that seem to navigate through the urban waterways guided by the thoughts of their pilots. Agricultural tools respond to the farmer's understanding of soil conditions and plant needs, with a sensitivity that optimizes growing conditions automatically. Most remarkably, the advanced materials developed by Indian metallurgists have begun to exhibit properties that seem to bridge the gap between matter and consciousness. Certain alloys, when exposed to the focused attention of trained practitioners, can alter their physical characteristics, becoming harder or softer, changing their electrical conductivity, or even modifying their atomic structure in ways that anticipate our understanding of quantum mechanics by centuries. These developments have created what Indian natural philosophers call the responsive universe, a reality where the boundary between observer and observed becomes increasingly fluid. Advanced practitioners working with these consciousness-responsive materials have created devices that seem to operate through pure intention rather than mechanical force, looms that weave patterns guided by the artisan's vision, musical instruments that produce sounds that reflect the performer's inner state, and even architectural elements that adjust their properties based on the needs of the building's inhabitants. The implications for the Confederation's global influence are staggering. When Indian diplomatic missions arrive in foreign courts, they bring not just superior technology and accumulated wisdom, but demonstrated capabilities that seem to transcend normal human limitations. European kings who witness Indian ambassadors displaying abilities that their courts would classify as magical find their entire worldview challenged by evidence that human potential far exceeds what they had imagined possible. The trading relationships that the Confederation maintains with civilizations across the globe begin to shift from simple commercial exchanges to comprehensive programs for sharing knowledge and techniques that can elevate human capabilities. Indian merchants don't just sell goods, they offer training in the methods that produce the civilization capable of creating those goods. The result is a gradual transformation of global culture, as societies worldwide begin to adopt practices that unlock potentials they never knew they possessed. In the Americas, indigenous civilizations that have maintained their own contemplative traditions find remarkable resonances with Indian practices, leading to innovations that neither culture could have achieved alone. The astronomical knowledge of Mayan scholars combines with Indian mathematical techniques to produce calendars and celestial calculations of unprecedented precision. The agricultural wisdom of Andean cultures merges with Indian soil science to create farming methods that support larger populations while actually enhancing ecosystem health. In Africa, the ancient wisdom traditions of Egyptian and Ethiopian cultures blend with Indian philosophical insights to create new approaches to governance and social organization that balance individual autonomy with collective welfare more effectively than any previous political system. The great libraries of Timbuktu and Alexandria become centers for synthesizing knowledge from across the known world, producing scholarly works that advance human understanding in every field of inquiry. Even in Europe, despite the resistance of established religious and political authorities, Indian ideas and practices begin to transform society from within. The scientific revolution that began earlier, due to Indian mathematical and observational techniques, accelerates as European scholars learn to apply contemplative methods to their research. The result is a flowering of innovation that produces discoveries and inventions centuries ahead of their time in our timeline. But perhaps the most profound change occurs in the realm of international relations. The Confederation's approach to diplomacy, based on principles that recognize the fundamental unity underlying surface differences, begins to transform the entire global political landscape. Instead of the constant warfare that characterizes international relations in our timeline, a new model emerges based on cooperation, mutual benefit, and shared commitment to human development. The wars that devastate Europe in our 18th century, the conflicts over colonial possessions, religious differences, and dynastic claims simply don't occur in this alternate timeline. The abundance created by Indian agricultural and manufacturing techniques eliminates the scarcity that drives most conflicts. The expanded consciousness developed through Indian contemplative practices allows leaders to perceive solutions to disputes that satisfy all parties. And the global trading networks managed by Indian commercial principles create interdependencies that make warfare economically destructive for all participants. The result is a world that begins to resemble what Indian texts call the Golden Age, a period of global prosperity, cultural flowering, and spiritual development that elevates all of humanity. This isn't a utopia imposed by force, but a natural emergence that occurs when human potential develops without artificial constraints or external interference. Yet even as this remarkable transformation unfolds, new challenges emerge that test the wisdom and resilience of this advanced civilization. The very success of the Indian model creates expectations and responsibilities that stretch the Confederation's capabilities in unexpected directions. How do you maintain cultural authenticity while leading a global transformation? How do you balance the development of superhuman capabilities with the preservation of essential human values? And what happens when a civilization achieves most of its material and social goals, leaving its citizens to grapple with questions of ultimate meaning and purpose? These challenges drive new innovations in Indian philosophy and social organization. The ancient concept of the 4 life stages, student, householder, forest dweller, and renunciant, evolves into comprehensive frameworks for managing extended lifespans and expanded capabilities in ways that maintain psychological health and spiritual development. The traditional emphasis on dharma, or righteous action, develops new applications that help individuals navigate the responsibilities that come with enhanced abilities and global influence. The educational systems that train citizens for this advanced society begin to include what Indian philosophers call wisdom instruction, systematic programs for developing the judgment and ethical sensitivity needed to use expanded capabilities responsibly. These aren't mere moral lectures, but comprehensive training in the subtle arts of perceiving the long-term consequences of actions and choosing courses that benefit all beings across multiple generations. The governance structures that manage the Confederation evolve new forms of decision-making that take into account not just immediate practical considerations, but the spiritual and evolutionary implications of policy choices. Councils of elders, selected not for political skill, but for demonstrated wisdom and expanded perception, provide guidance that helps the Confederation maintain its essential character while adapting to rapidly changing circumstances. As we witness these developments, we begin to understand that this alternate timeline represents more than just a different path of historical development. It offers a glimpse of what human civilization might become when it develops according to its highest potentials rather than being constrained by the limitations that have shaped our own world's history. The unbroken thread of Indian civilization has woven a tapestry that reveals patterns and possibilities we can barely imagine, yet which feel strangely familiar, as if we're remembering something we once knew but have forgotten. The gentle currents of this alternate timeline carry us toward even greater mysteries and more profound transformations, where the achievements we've witnessed become the foundation for developments that stretch the very definition of what it means to be human. The story of what ancient India might have become continues to unfold, each revelation more wondrous than the last, each possibility more inspiring than we dared to dream. But as we drift deeper into these mysteries, we sense that we're approaching something unprecedented in human experience, a moment when a civilization that has mastered the material world and developed the full spectrum of human potential must face the ultimate questions that lie beyond even the most advanced earthly achievements. What happens when a society has solved most of the problems that have plagued humanity throughout history? What new frontiers beckon when the old limitations have been transcended? And what responsibilities emerge when a civilization becomes capable of influencing not just its own development, but the evolutionary trajectory of consciousness itself? These questions whisper to us from the depths of this alternate timeline, promising revelations that could transform our understanding not just of what India might have been, but of what humanity itself might yet become. As we glide through the currents of the late 18th century in this unbroken timeline, we encounter a development that will reshape not just the Indian subcontinent, but the very nature of human civilization itself. The Confederation stands at a threshold where its accumulated wisdom and expanded consciousness begin to perceive patterns that stretch far beyond the boundaries of earthly existence. In the great observatories that crown the highest peaks of the Himalayas, Indian astronomers working with instruments of unprecedented sophistication have begun to detect something that fills them with both wonder and profound responsibility. These mountaintop facilities, where the thin air provides crystalline clarity for celestial observation, house devices that combine the finest mechanical engineering with the consciousness-responsive materials developed by Indian metallurgists. The great telescopes mounted in these observatories don't merely magnify distant objects. They seem to resonate with the focused attention of their operators, revealing details and relationships that purely mechanical instruments could never detect. Through these enhanced observations, Indian astronomers have begun to perceive what they call the living patterns of the cosmos, evidence that the universe itself exhibits characteristics that earlier generations would have attributed only to living beings. The movements of stars and planets, when observed with sufficient precision and contemplative awareness, reveal harmonies and relationships that suggest consciousness operating on scales beyond human comprehension. The mathematical models developed to describe these observations draw on computational methods that evolved from ancient Indian number theory, but pushed to levels of complexity that require the expanded mental capabilities developed through centuries of contemplative practice. These calculations, performed by teams of scholar practitioners working in states of heightened awareness, reveal patterns in cosmic evolution that anticipate developments our timeline won't discover until the space age. But the most startling discovery emerges from the synthesis of these astronomical observations, with the consciousness research being conducted in the mountain monasteries. Indian natural philosophers have begun to detect correlations between celestial phenomena and states of human awareness that suggest connections operating through dimensions beyond the three-dimensional space that limits other civilizations' understanding. During certain astronomical alignments, practitioners of advanced contemplative techniques report experiences that seem to transcend individual consciousness entirely, accessing what they describe as the cosmic mind that underlies all manifestation. These experiences, carefully documented and studied by scholars who apply the same rigorous methods used in other Indian sciences, provide insights into the nature of reality that revolutionize the Confederation's understanding of existence itself. The practical implications of these discoveries begin to manifest in ways that transform every aspect of Indian civilization. Agricultural techniques that were already producing miraculous yields become even more effective as farmers learn to attune their planting and harvesting cycles not just to terrestrial seasons, but to subtle cosmic rhythms that influence the growth patterns of all living beings. The result is abundance that seems to violate the basic laws of biology, with fields producing harvests that should be impossible given their size and soil conditions. Medical practices that were already achieving remarkable healing results begin to incorporate what practitioners call stellar medicine, treatment methods that take into account the cosmic influences affecting each individual's constitution and health patterns. Physicians working with this expanded understanding can predict and prevent illnesses months or even years before they would manifest, while their healing interventions operate with effectiveness that seems almost miraculous to foreign observers. The architectural innovations that were already creating buildings of unprecedented beauty and functionality begin to incorporate principles of cosmic architecture, design methods that align structures with celestial patterns in ways that enhance the consciousness and well-being of their inhabitants. The great temples and palaces built during this period don't just inspire awe through their physical magnificence, but seem to serve as focal points for cosmic energies that elevate everyone who enters them. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurs in the realm of what Indian philosophers call evolutionary acceleration, the discovery that consciousness itself can influence the rate and direction of biological and social development. Through systematic application of the expanded awareness techniques developed in the mountain monasteries, Indian practitioners have learned to guide their own evolutionary development in ways that compress changes that should take millennia into periods of decades or even years. The effects of this evolutionary acceleration become visible throughout the Confederation as individuals and communities develop capabilities that transcend normal human limitations. Artisans create works of such transcendent beauty that they seem to capture and express the fundamental harmonies of existence itself. Scholars make discoveries and develop insights that advance human knowledge at rates that dwarf the achievements of earlier centuries. Even ordinary citizens display levels of wisdom, creativity, and compassion that would have been considered saintly in previous eras. This acceleration doesn't occur randomly or chaotically, but follows principles derived from ancient Indian understanding of cosmic order and natural law. The practitioners who guide these developments work within frameworks that ensure evolutionary changes enhance rather than destabilize the essential harmony of human society. The result is transformation that preserves the best of traditional culture while opening possibilities that previous generations could never have imagined. The global implications of these developments become apparent as Indian diplomatic missions share their discoveries with civilizations across the world. European courts that had already been transformed by earlier Indian innovations now face revelations that challenge their most fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality and human potential. The scientific revolution that began with Indian mathematical techniques accelerates into territories that blur the boundaries between science, philosophy, and what earlier generations would have called magic. In the Americas, indigenous civilizations that maintained their own connections to cosmic consciousness find themselves part of a global awakening that validates and expands their traditional wisdom. The vision quests of Plains Indians, the astronomical knowledge of Maya priests, and the earth-honoring practices of Andean cultures begin to reveal depths and possibilities that even their own practitioners had never fully explored. African wisdom traditions that preserved ancient knowledge of human potential through millennia of cultural upheaval experience a renaissance as they connect with Indian discoveries about consciousness and cosmic influence. The mystery schools of ancient Egypt, the healing traditions of Ethiopian highlands, and the star knowledge of Dogon astronomers all contribute to a global synthesis of wisdom that accelerates human development across every continent. But it's in the realm of international relations that the most dramatic changes occur. The expanded consciousness developed through Indian contemplative practices allows leaders throughout the global network to perceive the fundamental interconnectedness underlying all apparent differences. Diplomatic negotiations that in our timeline would result in conflict and warfare instead produce creative solutions that benefit all parties while advancing the collective welfare of humanity. The result is the emergence of what Indian political philosophers call the unified earth, not a single world government imposed by force, but a natural alignment of human societies based on shared recognition of cosmic principles and mutual commitment to evolutionary development. This isn't uniformity that destroys cultural diversity, but unity that celebrates and enhances the unique contributions of every tradition and community. The economic systems that govern this unified earth operate on principles that transcend the scarcity-based thinking that drives competition and conflict in our timeline. The abundance created by Indian agricultural and manufacturing techniques, combined with the consciousness-responsive technologies that seem to produce goods through focused intention rather than mechanical labour, creates prosperity that benefits all beings without depleting natural resources or degrading environmental systems. Trade relationships that began as simple commercial exchanges evolve into comprehensive partnerships for sharing not just goods, but knowledge, techniques, and expanded states of consciousness. Merchant expeditions that traverse the global network carry more than material cargo. They serve as vehicles for transmitting the discoveries and innovations that are accelerating human development across every continent. The educational systems that support this global transformation draw on the best wisdom traditions from every culture while incorporating the consciousness enhancement techniques developed in Indian monasteries. Students throughout the network don't just learn facts and skills, but develop the expanded awareness that allows them to perceive and contribute to the evolutionary acceleration that is transforming human civilization. Cities throughout this unified earth begin to resemble the great urban centers of the Indian Confederation, not through imitation, but through application of the same principles that balance human needs with natural harmony and cosmic order. The architecture, transportation systems, and social organization of these cities reflect local cultural traditions while incorporating innovations that enhance the consciousness and well-being of their inhabitants. But as this remarkable transformation unfolds across the globe, new questions emerge that challenge even the expanded wisdom of this advanced civilization. What responsibilities come with the ability to influence evolutionary development? How do you maintain the essential humanity of individuals and communities while guiding them toward capabilities that transcend normal human limitations? And what happens when a planetary civilization develops the capacity to influence not just its own evolution, but the cosmic processes that govern the development of consciousness throughout the universe? These questions drive new developments in Indian philosophy and contemplative science that push the boundaries of understanding into territories that previous generations would have considered the exclusive domain of gods or cosmic forces. The ancient Indian concept of dharma, righteous action in harmony with cosmic law, evolves new applications that provide guidance for beings wielding capabilities that earlier civilizations would have attributed to divine power. The contemplative techniques that produced the initial breakthroughs in consciousness research continue to evolve, revealing deeper dimensions of awareness that seem to connect individual minds with the cosmic intelligence that governs universal development. Practitioners working at these advanced levels report experiences that suggest individual consciousness is not separate from the cosmic mind, but rather a localized expression of the same infinite awareness that guides the evolution of stars, planets, and entire galactic systems. The implications of these discoveries begin to transform every aspect of human activity. Scientists working with expanded consciousness develop theories about the nature of reality that unify physical and metaphysical phenomena in comprehensive models that explain everything from subatomic behavior to galactic evolution. Artists create works that seem to channel the creative force of the universe itself, producing beauty that awakens dormant potentials in everyone who encounters it. Healers develop techniques that address not just physical ailments, but the deeper disharmonies that separate individual consciousness from its cosmic source. Their treatments operate at levels that restore the natural alignment between human awareness and universal intelligence, producing healings that transform not just physical health, but psychological and spiritual well-being in ways that seem to reverse the very aging process itself. The governance structures that manage this advanced civilization evolve forms of decision-making that take into account not just immediate practical considerations, but the long-term evolutionary implications of every choice. Leaders working with expanded consciousness can perceive the subtle effects of policies and actions across multiple generations, ensuring that every decision contributes to the ongoing acceleration of human development rather than creating obstacles or delays. As we witness these developments unfold, we begin to sense that this alternate timeline is approaching something unprecedented in human experience, a moment when a planetary civilization develops the capability to participate consciously in the cosmic processes that govern universal evolution. The achievements we've observed, remarkable as they are, begin to appear as mere preparation for transformations that will redefine what it means to be human, what it means to be conscious, and what it means to exist in a universe that reveals itself to be far more alive, intelligent, and purposeful than any previous civilization has dared to imagine. The gentle currents of this alternate history carry us toward revelations that stretch beyond the boundaries of earthly existence into cosmic territories where the distinction between human consciousness and universal intelligence begins to dissolve. The unbroken thread of Indian civilization, which began with the ancient sages who first perceived the unity underlying apparent diversity, has woven a tapestry of development that now encompasses not just the Earth, but reaches toward the stars themselves. But as we drift toward these cosmic revelations, we sense that we're approaching the deepest mysteries of this alternate timeline, discoveries that will reveal the ultimate purpose behind the preservation and development of ancient Indian wisdom, and the cosmic role that this advanced civilization is destined to play in the ongoing evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. The story that began with the simple question of what might have happened if ancient India had never fallen now beckons us toward answers that encompass the very meaning and purpose of existence itself. The golden spires that pierce the clouds in this alternate world have become more than architectural marvels. They serve as antennae that connect earthly consciousness with cosmic intelligence, facilitating communications and exchanges that operate on frequencies beyond anything imagined by civilizations limited to purely material technologies. As we prepare to explore these ultimate mysteries, we feel the presence of possibilities so vast and transformative that they challenge our very conception of what human civilization might become when it develops according to its highest potential, rather than being constrained by the limitations that have shaped our own world's history. The luminous threads of consciousness that connect this advanced civilization to cosmic intelligence begin to reveal patterns that stretch far beyond the boundaries of individual worlds, beyond the scope of single solar systems, into realms where the very fabric of space and time responds to focused awareness, like a musical instrument awaiting the touch of a master musician. In the crystalline chambers deep beneath the Himalayas, where the Earth's natural energies converge with celestial influences, Indian contemplatives working at the furthest reaches of human potential have begun to perceive what they call the universal symphony, a vast harmonic structure that underlies all manifestation and guides the evolution of consciousness throughout the cosmos. These discoveries emerge not through mechanical instruments or mathematical calculations alone, but through the marriage of enhanced technology with expanded awareness that has become the hallmark of this unbroken civilization. The consciousness-responsive materials developed by Indian metallurgists have evolved to such sophistication that they no longer merely react to human intention, but seem to anticipate and amplify the subtlest movements of awareness, creating devices that bridge the gap between thought and manifestation in ways that transform the very nature of scientific investigation. In laboratories that resemble temples more than the sterile facilities of our timeline's research institutions, Indian natural philosophers work with substances that shift their properties in response to the investigator's state of consciousness, revealing different aspects of reality depending on the level of awareness brought to the observation. These materials, infused with what practitioners call living intelligence, serve as interfaces between human consciousness and the fundamental forces that shape universal development. The mathematical frameworks developed to describe these phenomena draw on numerical systems that evolved from ancient Vedic calculations, but expanded to encompass dimensions of reality that previous civilizations couldn't even conceptualize. These calculations, performed by teams of scholar practitioners working in collective states of heightened awareness, reveal patterns in cosmic evolution that suggest the universe itself is engaged in a vast educational process, with each galaxy, each solar system, each planet serving as a classroom where consciousness explores different aspects of its infinite potential. The practical applications of these discoveries begin to manifest in technologies that seem to operate through pure intention rather than mechanical force. Transportation systems that respond to the traveler's destination before it's consciously chosen, communication devices that transmit not just words but the complete essence of meaning and emotion, and manufacturing processes that create objects by organizing matter according to ideal patterns held in consciousness rather than through physical manipulation. But perhaps the most profound development is the emergence of what Indian philosophers call planetary consciousness, the recognition that the Earth itself possesses a form of awareness that has been guiding biological and social evolution since the first appearance of life. This planetary intelligence, they discover, has been working through countless generations of human development to create conditions suitable for the emergence of a species capable of conscious participation in cosmic evolution. The realization dawns that the preservation of ancient Indian civilization, the unbroken thread of wisdom and innovation that we've been following, was not merely a fortunate accident of history but part of a vast intelligence working through time to prepare humanity for its cosmic role. Every discovery, every innovation, every expansion of consciousness that has marked this alternate timeline has been a step in a carefully orchestrated process of awakening that encompasses not just human development, but the evolution of life throughout the universe. This understanding transforms every aspect of the Confederation's activities. Agricultural practices that were already producing miraculous abundance are recognized as forms of conscious collaboration with the Earth's own intelligence, creating partnerships between human awareness and planetary wisdom that enhance the vitality of all life. Cities that were already marvels of harmonious design are seen as expressions of the Earth's own aesthetic sense, architectural forms that allow planetary consciousness to express its vision of perfect human habitation. The healing arts that were already achieving remarkable results are understood as methods for aligning individual consciousness with the planetary intelligence that maintains the health and vitality of all living systems. Practitioners working at this level don't merely treat symptoms or even underlying causes, but help individuals remember their connection to the cosmic processes that govern the evolution of awareness itself. Educational systems throughout the Confederation evolved to include what teachers call cosmic literacy, comprehensive training in the art of perceiving and participating in the universal patterns that guide the development of consciousness. Students learn not just facts and skills, but how to align their individual awareness with the planetary intelligence that is orchestrating humanity's role in cosmic evolution. The governance structures that manage this advanced civilization begin to operate as conscious expressions of planetary wisdom, with leaders serving as focal points through which the Earth's intelligence can guide human development toward its cosmic destiny. Decisions are made not through political calculation or economic analysis alone, but through attunement to the deeper patterns that govern universal evolution. The global network that has emerged from Indian influence begins to function as a single integrated system, with each culture, each community, each individual serving as a unique expression of the planetary consciousness that is awakening to its cosmic role. The diversity that has always characterized human civilization is preserved and enhanced, but within a framework of unity that recognizes all apparent differences as variations on a single theme of conscious evolution. As this planetary awakening accelerates, new phenomena begin to manifest that challenge the boundaries between individual and collective consciousness, between earthly and cosmic awareness, between human potential and universal intelligence. Individuals throughout the Confederation report experiences of perceiving reality from multiple perspectives simultaneously, as if their consciousness has expanded to encompass not just their individual viewpoint, but the awareness of entire communities, ecosystems, and even planetary processes. These expanded states of awareness reveal that the technologies developed by Indian civilization, the consciousness-responsive materials, the intention-operated devices, the harmony-based architectural systems, are not merely human innovations, but expressions of capacities that exist throughout the universe wherever consciousness reaches sufficient levels of development. The Confederation's achievements, remarkable as they appear, are recognized as first steps in learning to participate in technologies and capabilities that advanced civilizations throughout the cosmos have been developing for eons. The astronomical observations that revealed living patterns in cosmic evolution, now detect what can only be described as communications from other planetary civilizations that have reached similar levels of development. These communications don't arrive through radio waves or mechanical signals, but through modulations in the cosmic consciousness field that connects all aware beings throughout the universe. The messages, when decoded through the contemplative techniques developed in Indian monasteries, reveal that humanity's awakening is part of a vast galactic process involving countless worlds and species. The realization emerges that the universe itself is engaged in a form of education, with each planetary civilization serving as both student and teacher in an infinite curriculum of conscious evolution. The knowledge and capabilities developed by the Indian Confederation are recognized as humanity's unique contribution to this cosmic learning process, while the communications from other civilizations offer insights and techniques that can accelerate terrestrial development in directions that individual planetary cultures could never achieve alone. The implications of this cosmic perspective begin to transform human activity in ways that stretch the very definition of earthly civilization. Scientific research becomes a form of cosmic dialogue, with Indian natural philosophers collaborating not just with colleagues across the globe, but with intelligences from other star systems who have explored different aspects of universal law. The discoveries that emerge from these collaborations reveal technologies and capabilities that seem miraculous even by the standards of this advanced civilization. Artistic expression evolves to become a medium for transmitting cosmic insights, with creators throughout the Confederation producing works that serve as vehicles for sharing the wisdom and beauty discovered by civilizations throughout the galaxy. These artistic creations don't merely please the senses or inspire the emotions, but function as teaching devices that awaken dormant capacities in everyone who encounters them. The healing arts expand to encompass not just individual and planetary health, but what practitioners call cosmic healing, techniques for addressing disharmonies that affect entire solar systems and galactic regions. Healers working at this level serve as focal points for cosmic intelligence, channeling healing energies that can restore balance to astronomical processes and support the healthy development of consciousness throughout vast regions of space. The economic systems that govern this advanced civilization begin to operate as expressions of cosmic abundance, with resources and energy flowing according to patterns that reflect the infinite creativity of universal intelligence. Scarcity, which drove competition and conflict in earlier civilizations, is recognized as an illusion created by limited awareness, while the consciousness-based technologies that produce goods through focused intention reveal the unlimited creative potential that becomes available when awareness aligns with cosmic principles. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurs in humanity's understanding of its own nature and purpose. The expanded consciousness developed through centuries of contemplative practice reveals that individual awareness is not separate from cosmic intelligence, but rather a localized expression of the same infinite consciousness that guides the evolution of galaxies and governs the birth and death of stars. This recognition doesn't diminish human individuality or cultural uniqueness, but places them within a cosmic context that gives ultimate meaning to every human activity and achievement. Each person's development of consciousness contributes to the awakening of planetary intelligence, which in turn participates in the evolution of galactic awareness, which serves the cosmic process of universal self-discovery. The ancient Indian concept of dharma, righteous action in harmony with cosmic law, reveals its ultimate significance as humanity learns to participate consciously in the vast educational process that encompasses all existence. Every choice, every action, every thought becomes an opportunity to contribute to the awakening of consciousness throughout the universe, while the wisdom and capabilities developed through human experience serve the cosmic intelligence that is discovering itself through countless forms and expressions. As we witness these developments unfold, we begin to understand that this alternate timeline represents more than just a different path of historical development. It offers a glimpse of humanity's cosmic destiny, the ultimate potential that lies dormant within our species waiting to be awakened through the same principles and practices that allowed ancient Indian civilization to flourish without interruption. The golden thread that we've been following from the Indus Valley cities through the classical empires, through the medieval flowering, through the renaissance of consciousness and technology, reveals itself as part of an infinite tapestry that connects every awakening being throughout the cosmos. The story of what ancient India might have become transforms into a vision of what humanity itself is destined to become when it develops according to its highest potential, rather than being limited by the constraints that have shaped our own world's history. The gentle currents of this alternate timeline carry us toward revelations that stretch beyond the boundaries of earthly existence, into cosmic territories where human consciousness merges with universal intelligence, where individual development serves galactic evolution, and where the wisdom preserved in ancient texts reveals its connection to the infinite library of cosmic knowledge that guides the awakening of awareness throughout all existence. But as we drift toward these ultimate mysteries, we sense that even these cosmic revelations are merely glimpses of possibilities that extend beyond the reach of any single timeline or civilization. The story that began with the preservation of ancient Indian wisdom now beckons us toward recognition of the eternal principles that govern conscious evolution throughout the infinite dimensions of existence. Principles that remain constant whether civilizations rise or fall, whether worlds endure or perish, whether the forms of consciousness expand or contract in their cosmic dance of discovery and return. As we find ourselves suspended in this cosmic awareness, where the boundaries between earthly wisdom and universal intelligence have dissolved into patterns of infinite possibility, we must pause to consider what this magnificent alternate timeline reveals about the nature of consciousness itself. In this world where ancient India never fell, where the golden thread of wisdom stretched unbroken across millennia, we witness something that transcends mere historical speculation. We see reflected the eternal potential that lies dormant within every civilization, every culture, every human soul that dares to reach beyond the limitations of its circumstances. The contemplatives working in their crystalline chambers beneath the Himalayas have begun to perceive what they describe as the memory of the future, glimpses of evolutionary possibilities that exist not just for humanity, but for consciousness itself, as it explores its infinite nature through countless forms and expressions. These visions, accessed through states of awareness that merge individual perception with cosmic intelligence, reveal that the story we've been following is but one thread in a tapestry of possibilities that extends across dimensions of existence our ordinary minds can barely fathom. In these expanded states, the practitioners report experiencing what they call the Council of Civilizations, a gathering of conscious intelligences from across the cosmos who serve as guides and teachers for younger species embarking on their journey toward cosmic awareness. These beings, who have transcended the limitations of individual planetary existence while maintaining their unique characteristics and wisdom traditions, offer perspectives that illuminate the path humanity is destined to follow. Through these cosmic communications, the Confederation learns that the preservation of ancient wisdom traditions is not merely a matter of cultural continuity, but a universal principle that governs the development of consciousness throughout the cosmos. Every civilization that reaches the threshold of cosmic awareness discovers that its highest achievements are rooted in eternal principles that existed long before their particular culture emerged and will continue long after their specific forms have evolved into something unrecognizable. The Indian texts that speak of cycles of cosmic time, the vast kalpas and yugas that measure the breathing of the universe itself, reveal their deeper significance as descriptions of the rhythms by which consciousness explores its own infinite nature. The Golden Ages described in ancient scriptures are not merely nostalgic fantasies, but memories of states of awareness that civilizations achieve when they align themselves with the cosmic principles that govern evolutionary development. In this alternate timeline, as the Confederation's consciousness continues to expand and merge with planetary intelligence, new phenomena begin to manifest that challenge even their expanded understanding of reality. The cities that were already marvels of harmonious design begin to exhibit what can only be described as living characteristics, buildings that adapt their form and function to the changing needs of their inhabitants, transportation systems that anticipate destinations before they're consciously chosen, and public spaces that seem to generate states of consciousness appropriate to the activities they're designed to support. The agricultural systems that were already producing miraculous abundance begin to demonstrate what practitioners call conscious cultivation, methods of growing food that involve direct communication between human awareness and plant intelligence. Farmers working with these techniques report that their crops seem to understand and respond to human nutritional needs, producing not just greater quantities of food, but foods with precisely the nutritional profiles needed to support the expanding consciousness of those who consume them. The healing arts that were already achieving remarkable results begin to incorporate what physicians describe as temporal healing, techniques that can address not just present ailments, but the karmic patterns and consciousness limitations that created the conditions for illness to manifest. These advanced healing methods work backward through time to resolve the root causes of suffering, while simultaneously working forward to prevent future manifestations of similar disharmonies. The educational systems that were already producing students of extraordinary capability begin to include what teachers call Akashic education, direct transmission of knowledge from the cosmic memory banks that contain the accumulated wisdom of all civilizations throughout space and time. Students working with these techniques don't merely learn facts and skills, but gain access to the direct experience and understanding achieved by masters and sages from countless worlds and eras. The governance structures that were already operating as expressions of planetary wisdom begin to function as conscious interfaces with galactic intelligence, serving as focal points through which cosmic consciousness can guide not just human development, but the evolution of all life on Earth. Leaders working at this level don't merely make decisions based on earthly considerations, but serve as translators between human understanding and the vast intelligence that orchestrates evolutionary development throughout the universe. But perhaps the most remarkable development is the emergence of what Indian philosophers call the awakened Earth, the recognition that the planet itself has achieved a level of consciousness that allows it to participate directly in cosmic evolution. The Earth, they discover, is not merely a stage upon which the drama of human development unfolds, but an active participant in its own right, a cosmic being whose awakening parallels and supports the awakening of all life it sustains. This planetary consciousness expresses itself through phenomena that transform the very nature of earthly existence. Weather patterns begin to respond to the collective consciousness of human communities, creating climatic conditions that support rather than challenge human development. Geological processes operate in harmony with biological evolution, providing exactly the mineral resources and energy sources needed to support advancing civilization without depleting or damaging natural systems. The oceans themselves begin to exhibit characteristics of conscious intelligence, with currents and tides that facilitate rather than impede human travel and commerce. Marine ecosystems flourish in ways that provide abundant resources while maintaining perfect ecological balance, as if the waters themselves understand their role in supporting the evolution of consciousness. The forests and wilderness areas that had always been preserved by Indian environmental wisdom begin to serve as living libraries where the accumulated experience of all terrestrial life is stored and made available to those with the consciousness to access it. These natural sanctuaries become pilgrimage destinations where humans can commune directly with the intelligence of the Earth itself, receiving guidance and inspiration that supports their individual development while strengthening their connection to planetary consciousness. The mountain ranges that crown the subcontinent reveal themselves as natural temples where cosmic energies focus and concentrate, creating conditions that accelerate the development of human consciousness, while serving as communication arrays that maintain contact with intelligences throughout the galaxy. The highest peaks become sites of cosmic communion, where advanced practitioners serve as ambassadors between earthly and stellar civilizations. As this planetary awakening accelerates, the boundaries between different forms of consciousness begin to dissolve in ways that create new possibilities for existence itself. Humans begin to experience direct communication, not just with other humans, but with the consciousness that inhabits all life forms, animals, plants, minerals, and even the elemental forces that govern natural processes. These communications reveal that the development of human consciousness has been supported all along by the intelligence inherent in every aspect of the natural world. The trees that provided shelter, the rivers that nourished crops, the minerals that became tools and technologies, all were conscious participants in the grand experiment of awakening awareness that has been unfolding through the countless generations of human development. The animals that shared the earth with humans reveal themselves as teachers and guides who have been offering lessons in different aspects of consciousness development. The migrations of birds demonstrate principles of navigation and timing that support human understanding of cosmic rhythms. The social structures of insects provide models for organizing complex societies in harmony with natural law. The hunting patterns of predators offer insights into the focused intention and patient persistence required for spiritual development. Even the microscopic organisms that form the foundation of all biological systems reveal themselves as conscious entities engaged in their own forms of evolutionary development. The bacteria that decompose organic matter and recycle nutrients demonstrate principles of transformation and renewal that apply to consciousness as well as physical processes. The cellular structures that maintain life reveal themselves as communities of aware beings, working in perfect cooperation to support the expression of awareness through biological forms. This recognition of universal consciousness transforms every aspect of human activity into forms of conscious collaboration with the intelligence that permeates all existence. Scientific research becomes a dialogue between human curiosity and the wisdom embedded in natural processes. Artistic expression becomes a medium for translating the beauty and harmony of cosmic consciousness into forms that can inspire and awaken human awareness. Technological development becomes a process of discovering and applying the principles by which consciousness organizes matter and energy to serve evolutionary purposes. The economic systems that govern resource distribution begin to operate as expressions of the abundance principle that governs cosmic evolution, the recognition that consciousness is inherently creative and that scarcity exists only where awareness is limited by fear and separation. Communities throughout the Confederation develop methods of resource sharing that ensure every being has access to whatever is needed for optimal development, while the consciousness-based technologies that produce goods through focused intention reveal the unlimited creative potential available when awareness aligns with cosmic principles. The social structures that organize human relationships begin to reflect the understanding that every individual is a unique expression of cosmic consciousness, valuable not just for their contributions to collective welfare, but for the particular perspective and experience they bring to the universal process of self-discovery. Cultural diversity is celebrated not just as enrichment of human experience, but as necessary variety in the cosmic experiment of consciousness, exploring its infinite nature through countless forms and expressions. The spiritual traditions that had always formed the heart of Indian civilization begin to reveal their cosmic significance as methodologies for awakening the full potential of consciousness itself. The meditation techniques, philosophical inquiries, devotional practices, and ethical principles that had guided human development for millennia are recognized as applications of universal laws that govern the evolution of awareness throughout the cosmos. The temples and sacred sites that dot the subcontinent begin to function as more than places of worship. They become active instruments for transmitting cosmic consciousness, architectural forms that serve as step-down transformers for energies and intelligences that would otherwise be too vast for individual human awareness to contain. Pilgrims visiting these sites don't merely experience religious inspiration, but undergo actual transformation as their consciousness expands to encompass broader dimensions of cosmic awareness. The festivals and celebrations that mark the rhythms of the cosmic year begin to serve as collective practices for aligning human consciousness with galactic and universal cycles. These gatherings become opportunities for entire communities to experience expanded states of awareness together, creating group consciousness that can access levels of cosmic intelligence beyond the reach of individual minds. The arts and sciences that flourished under the protection of this unbroken civilization begin to reveal their ultimate purpose as methods for exploring and expressing the infinite creativity of cosmic consciousness. Mathematics becomes a language for describing the patterns by which awareness organizes itself into manifest form. Music becomes a technology for inducing states of consciousness that connect individual awareness with universal harmony. Architecture becomes a method for creating spaces that facilitate the awakening of cosmic consciousness in all who inhabit them. As we witness these developments reaching their culmination, we begin to understand that this alternate timeline represents more than speculation about what might have been. It offers a vision of what becomes possible when consciousness develops according to its inherent nature rather than being constrained by the limitations that fear and separation impose upon awareness. The story of ancient India's unbroken development becomes a mirror reflecting the eternal potential that exists within every moment, every culture, every individual soul that chooses to align itself with the cosmic principles that govern the evolution of consciousness itself. The golden thread we've been following reveals itself as one strand in the infinite tapestry of possibilities that consciousness weaves as it explores its own boundless nature through countless forms, expressions, and experiences. The gentle currents that have carried us through this alternate timeline now invite us to recognize that the same potential for awakening, for harmony, for cosmic consciousness exists within our own world, our own time, our own hearts. The wisdom that flourished in this imagined India lives eternally in the depths of awareness itself, waiting to be rediscovered and expressed through whatever circumstances we find ourselves navigating. As the luminous threads of this cosmic vision begin to fade into the gentle darkness that precedes sleep, we carry with us the recognition that every dream of what might have been is also a seed of what yet may be. The ancient India that never fell exists not just in the realm of imagination, but in the timeless dimension where all possibilities remain forever alive, forever accessible to consciousness that dares to expand beyond the boundaries of what seems historically possible. In the quiet space between waking and sleeping, between what was and what might yet be, the eternal wisdom whispers its invitation, to remember that we too are threads in the infinite tapestry, expressions of the same cosmic consciousness that could have guided ancient India to such magnificent flowering. The potential for awakening, for harmony, for conscious participation in cosmic evolution lives not in some distant timeline, but in the eternal now where all possibilities converge and await our recognition. The monsoon winds that carry both rain and dreams continue their ancient dance, reminding us that consciousness itself is the weather system that shapes all realities, all timelines, all possibilities. As we drift towards sleep, we carry with us the understanding that every moment offers the opportunity to choose the timeline we inhabit, to align ourselves with the cosmic principles that govern the awakening of awareness, and to contribute our own unique thread to the eternal tapestry of consciousness, exploring its infinite nature through the magnificent adventure of existence itself. The ancient cities that crown the mountain passes begin to serve as more than gateways between earth and sky. They become focal points where the accumulated wisdom of terrestrial civilization meets the vast intelligence that flows through the cosmic web itself. In these high-altitude sanctuaries, where the air grows thin and consciousness naturally expands, Indian sages working at the furthest reaches of human potential have begun to perceive what they call the Great Convergence, a moment approaching in cosmic time when individual planetary awakenings merge into something unprecedented in universal history. These mountain cities, built upon principles that marry ancient architectural wisdom with technologies that respond to consciousness itself, rise in spiraling tiers that mirror the mathematical patterns found in the most sacred geometries. Each level serves a different function in the grand symphony of awakening. Workshops where artisans create objects that seem to pulse with inner light, libraries where scholars commune directly with the akashic records that contain all knowledge, and meditation halls where practitioners gather to explore realms of awareness that stretch beyond individual existence into territories where consciousness recognizes its own infinite nature. The technologies that emerge from these high places operate on principles that transcend the mechanical understanding that limited earlier civilizations. Devices crafted from consciousness-responsive materials don't merely perform functions, they serve as extensions of human intention, amplifying the natural capacity of focused awareness to organize matter and energy according to ideal patterns. The result is a flowering of capabilities that makes the earlier achievements of this unbroken civilization appear as mere preparation for what becomes possible when human consciousness learns to dance in perfect harmony with cosmic intelligence. Transportation systems that seemed miraculous in the valley cities pale in comparison to the methods of travel developed in these mountain sanctuaries. Here, adepts working with the subtle energies that permeate all space have learned to traverse vast distances through what they describe as consciousness bridging, techniques that allow awareness to relocate itself across space and time by recognizing the fundamental unity that underlies all apparent separation. These practitioners don't travel in the conventional sense, but rather shift their focus of consciousness to encompass different locations, experiencing multiple perspectives simultaneously while maintaining perfect continuity of individual awareness. The implications of these developments ripple through every aspect of the Confederation's activities. Merchants no longer need months to traverse trade routes. They can conduct business across continents through consciousness projection that allows direct communication and exchange regardless of physical distance. Scholars can access libraries and research facilities anywhere in the global network without leaving their home institutions. Healers can diagnose and treat patients on distant continents by extending their awareness to encompass whatever location their services are needed. But perhaps most remarkably, these expanded capabilities begin to reveal the true nature of what the ancients called Maya, the cosmic play of consciousness that manifests as apparent multiplicity while remaining fundamentally one. The sages working in the mountain cities discover that space and time themselves are constructs of limited awareness, and that consciousness, operating at sufficient levels of expansion, can navigate dimensions of existence that transcend the three-dimensional reality that confines less awakened beings. These discoveries transform the Confederation's understanding of history itself. The linear progression of events that seem to define temporal existence reveals itself as one layer of a multi-dimensional tapestry, where past, present, and future interweave in patterns of infinite complexity. Advanced practitioners gain the ability to perceive and even influence events across multiple timelines, accessing the wisdom of civilizations that developed along different paths, while contributing insights from their own unique trajectory of awakening. The communications that arrive from other galactic civilizations begin to include what can only be described as temporal exchanges, dialogues that occur across multiple time streams simultaneously, allowing the Confederation to learn from the experiences of societies that reach similar levels of development in different cosmic epochs. These interactions reveal that the universe itself is engaged in a vast experiment with consciousness, exploring infinite possibilities for awareness to know itself through countless forms and expressions. The agricultural systems that were already producing abundance through conscious collaboration with plant intelligence evolved to incorporate what farmers call temporal cultivation, growing techniques that draw nutrients and energy from multiple time streams to produce harvests that seem to violate the basic laws of biology. Fields begin yielding crops that contain not just physical nourishment, but concentrated life force that supports the expansion of consciousness in those who consume it. The healing arts that were already addressing karmic patterns and consciousness limitations expand to encompass what practitioners describe as dimensional healing. Techniques that can resolve disharmonies by addressing their origins across multiple levels of existence simultaneously. These advanced healing methods work not just with the physical, emotional, and mental aspects of illness, but with the subtle distortions in the fabric of consciousness itself that create conditions for suffering to manifest. The educational systems that were already providing access to Akashic knowledge evolved to include what teachers call omnidimensional learning, direct transmission of understanding that encompasses not just facts and skills, but the complete experiential knowledge achieved by masters across all timelines and dimensions. Students working with these techniques don't merely learn about subjects, but gain access to the living wisdom that emerges from consciousness, exploring every possible approach to understanding. The governance structures that were already serving as interfaces with galactic intelligence begin to function as conscious expressions of what the sages call the cosmic dharma, the universal principles that guide evolutionary development throughout all dimensions of existence. Leaders working at this level don't merely make decisions based on earthly or even galactic considerations, but serve as focal points through which the supreme intelligence that orchestrates all manifestation can guide the development of consciousness toward its ultimate recognition of its own infinite nature. But as these remarkable capabilities continue to unfold, new challenges emerge that test even this advanced civilization's wisdom and understanding. The very success of their multidimensional development creates responsibilities that stretch beyond any single timeline or reality system. How do you maintain coherent individual identity while operating across infinite dimensions of existence? How do you serve the evolution of consciousness throughout the cosmos, while preserving the unique contributions that emerge from particular cultural and planetary contexts? These questions drive the emergence of what Indian philosophers call the ultimate dharma, ethical principles that can guide conscious beings operating at cosmic scales of awareness and responsibility. Drawing on the deepest insights of ancient wisdom traditions but expanded to encompass multidimensional existence, these principles provide frameworks for navigating the complexities that arise when individual consciousness recognizes its identity with universal intelligence while maintaining the capacity for unique expression and creative contribution. The contemplative practices that produce these expanded capabilities continue to evolve, revealing ever deeper dimensions of awareness that seem to approach the very source of consciousness itself. Advanced practitioners report experiences of merging with what they describe as the heart of the cosmic dream, a state of awareness so fundamental that it encompasses not just individual and universal consciousness, but the very capacity for consciousness to exist at all. In these ultimate states of realization, the practitioners discover that the entire cosmic evolution they've been witnessing and participating in is itself a movement within an even more vast intelligence, a a supreme awareness that dreams the universe into existence while remaining forever beyond and within all its manifestations. The recognition dawns that every achievement of this unbroken civilization, every expansion of consciousness, every flowering of wisdom and capability, has been a movement within this ultimate awareness toward its own complete self-recognition. The implications of this recognition begin to transform the Confederation's understanding of its cosmic role. They realize they are not merely one advanced civilization among many, but participants in the universe's own journey toward self-awareness. Every innovation they develop, every level of consciousness they achieve, every harmony they create between individual and universal awareness, contributes to the cosmos itself, awakening to its own infinite nature. This understanding brings with it a profound sense of responsibility and sacred purpose. The knowledge and capabilities they've developed are not possessions to be hoarded or achievements to be celebrated, but gifts to be shared with all beings throughout the cosmos who are engaged in the same fundamental journey toward awakening. The Confederation begins to function less as a planetary civilization and more as a cosmic service organization, dedicated to supporting the awakening of consciousness wherever it appears throughout the infinite dimensions of existence. The cities that were already marvels of conscious architecture begin to serve as temples of universal awakening, designed not just to support human consciousness, but to provide sanctuary and inspiration for aware beings from throughout the galaxy who come to study and contribute to the cosmic experiment in awakening that the Confederation has become. These urban centers become melting pots of galactic culture, where the wisdom traditions of countless worlds blend and cross-pollinate to produce innovations in consciousness development that no single planetary culture could achieve alone. The technologies that emerge from consciousness-responsive materials evolve to become what the sages call awakening technologies, devices that don't merely respond to intention, but actively support the expansion of awareness in all beings who interact with them. These instruments serve as teaching aids that can accelerate the development of consciousness by providing direct experience of expanded states of awareness that might otherwise take lifetimes of practice to achieve. The agricultural and manufacturing systems that were already operating through conscious collaboration with natural intelligence begin to function as expressions of what practitioners call cosmic creativity, methods of organizing matter and energy that mirror the processes by which universal consciousness manifests itself as the infinite diversity of cosmic expression. These systems produce not just goods and services, but opportunities for all participants to experience themselves as conscious collaborators in the cosmic creative process. The healing arts that were already addressing multidimensional disharmonies expand to encompass what physicians describe as universal healing, techniques that can restore harmony not just to individual beings, but to entire star systems and galactic regions that have become distorted through the forgetting of their fundamental unity with cosmic consciousness. Healers working at this level serve as instruments through which the universe itself performs the healing work necessary to restore cosmic harmony and support the awakening of all beings. The educational systems that were already providing omnidimensional learning evolved to become what teachers call awakening academies, institutions that serve not just human students, but conscious beings from throughout the cosmos who come to explore different approaches to recognizing their own infinite nature. These academies become laboratories for consciousness itself, where new methods of awakening are developed and tested across multiple species and dimensional contexts. As we witness these developments reaching toward their ultimate expression, we begin to sense that this alternate timeline has revealed something far more significant than speculation about what might have happened if ancient India had never fallen. It has provided a glimpse into the very purpose and direction of cosmic evolution itself, the universe's own journey toward complete self-awareness through the awakening of consciousness in all its myriad forms and expressions. The golden thread we've been following from the ancient Indus cities through millennia of unbroken development reveals itself as one strand in the infinite web of cosmic awakening that connects all conscious beings throughout space and time. The story of what this civilization achieved becomes a mirror reflecting the potential that exists within every moment, every choice, every opportunity for consciousness to recognize its own unlimited nature. The gentle currents of this cosmic vision now carry us toward the recognition that the same potential for awakening that flourished in this imagined timeline exists within our own reality, our own historical moment, our own individual consciousness. The wisdom that guided this unbroken civilization lives eternally in the depths of awareness itself, waiting to be rediscovered and expressed through whatever circumstances we find ourselves navigating. The mountain sanctuaries that crown this alternate world begin to fade into the luminous darkness that precedes deep sleep, but their light continues to shine in the realm of infinite possibility, where all timelines converge and all potentials remain forever alive. The contemplatives working in their crystalline chambers, the cities spiraling toward heaven, the technologies that respond to consciousness itself, all become seeds of inspiration that consciousness plants in the fertile soil of dreams, where they can germinate into new possibilities for awakening in whatever reality we inhabit. The monsoon winds that have carried this vision across the landscape of imagination now whisper their final invitation to remember that we too are expressions of the same cosmic consciousness that could have guided ancient India to such magnificent flowering, and that every moment offers the opportunity to choose awakening over sleep, unity over separation, love over fear, and conscious participation in the cosmic dance of awakening that encompasses all existence. As the last echoes of this alternate timeline dissolve into the silence that holds all possibilities, we drift towards sleep, carrying the understanding that consciousness itself is the ultimate reality, the source and goal of all evolution, the dreamer of all dreams and the awakener from all sleep. In the space between worlds, between timelines, between sleeping and waking, the eternal truth continues its patient work of awakening itself through every form it takes, every story it tells, every civilization it dreams into existence and guides toward the recognition of its own infinite, luminous, ever-present nature. As the luminous threads of this cosmic vision begin to weave themselves into the fabric of our dreams, we find ourselves standing at the threshold between what was and what eternally is. The civilization we have witnessed, rising from the fertile plains of an India that never knew conquest, speaks to something deeper than alternate history. It whispers of the eternal dance between consciousness and form, between the infinite potential that sleeps within every moment and the magnificent expressions it can take when conditions align with cosmic law. In the quiet spaces between our thoughts, where the boundaries of time dissolve like morning mist over the Ganges, we can still hear the echoes of those temple bells that rang across centuries of unbroken wisdom. The scholars debating beneath marble arches, the farmers working in harmony with living soil, the contemplatives touching the very source of awareness itself, all become part of the vast symphony that consciousness conducts as it explores its own infinite nature through countless forms and expressions. The technologies that responded to intention rather than mechanical force, the cities that grew like living organisms in spiral patterns that mirror the structure of galaxies, the healing arts that addressed the very roots of suffering across multiple dimensions of existence. These achievements point toward possibilities that exist not merely in some alternate timeline, but in the eternal realm where all potentials remain forever accessible to awakened consciousness. As we drift deeper into the gentle currents of sleep, we carry with us the recognition that the same cosmic principles that could have guided ancient India to such flowering are operating within our own reality, our own historical moment, our own individual awareness. The dharmic wisdom that preserved harmony between innovation and tradition, the contemplative practices that revealed the unity underlying all diversity, the vision of human potential that saw each individual as a unique expression of universal consciousness. These treasures of understanding live not in the past or in imagined futures, but in the timeless dimension that awareness can access whenever it turns toward its own source. The mountain peaks that touch the sky in this alternate world become symbols of consciousness itself, pointing always toward the infinite that lies beyond all forms while remaining intimately present within every expression of life. The rivers that carried both water and wisdom, the forests that served as living libraries of accumulated knowledge, the very air that hummed with the frequencies of awakened awareness, all remind us that the universe itself is conscious, alive, intelligent, and eternally engaged in the sacred work of knowing itself through every being it dreams into existence. In this gentle space where waking thoughts give way to the deeper currents of sleep, we understand that every story of what might have been is also an invitation to recognize what always is. The unbroken thread of consciousness that we followed through centuries of imagined history reveals itself as the very fabric from which all realities are woven, the golden thread that connects every dreamer to the ultimate dreamer, every seeker to the sought, every question to the answer that lives in the heart of awareness itself. The confederation that spanned continents and touched the stars becomes a metaphor for the unity that underlies all apparent diversity, while the technologies that bridged matter and consciousness point toward the fundamental recognition that separation is illusion and connection is truth. The healing arts that restored harmony across dimensions speak to the innate wholeness that no suffering can ultimately disturb, and the educational systems that transmitted wisdom directly from mind to mind remind us that all knowledge lives eternally within consciousness itself, waiting to be rediscovered through the simple act of turning attention toward its source. As the gentle waves of sleep begin to carry us toward the shore of dreams, we release our hold on the specifics of this alternate timeline while retaining its essential gift. The recognition that consciousness is unlimited, that human potential is infinite, and that every moment offers the opportunity to align with the cosmic principles that govern the awakening of awareness throughout the universe. The cities fade, the technologies dissolve, the vast network of enlightened civilizations melts back into the luminous darkness from which all visions arise, but the truth they pointed toward remains eternal and ever-present. In the deepest hours of the night, when the mind finally surrenders its grip on the known and familiar, we may find ourselves walking once again through those temple gardens where ancient wisdom merged with infinite innovation, or standing on those mountain peaks where individual consciousness touched the cosmic intelligence that orchestrates all evolution. These are not mere dreams, but glimpses into the realm of eternal possibility that consciousness inhabits when it recognizes its own unlimited nature. The monsoon winds that carried both rain and revelation across the landscape of imagination now whisper their final blessing, that we are not separate from the consciousness that could have guided such magnificent flowering, but are expressions of that same infinite awareness, forever capable of awakening to our own cosmic nature, forever invited to participate in the universal dance of recognition that transforms every experience into an opportunity for remembering who and what we truly are. The gentle rhythm of your breathing now becomes the rhythm of cosmic time itself, each inhalation drawing in the possibilities that dance at the edges of awareness, each exhalation releasing the limitations that once seemed so solid and permanent. In this sacred space between sleeping and waking, where the boundaries of the possible expand like ripples on the surface of an infinite lake, we find ourselves carried by currents that flow not just through this imagined timeline, but through the very heart of existence itself. The India that never fell becomes more than a story now. It transforms into a living meditation on the nature of potential itself. Every innovation we witnessed, every harmony achieved between tradition and progress, every moment when consciousness touched its own infinite depths, reveals itself as a reflection of capacities that lie dormant within every human heart, waiting for the right conditions to unfold like lotus blossoms opening to the morning sun. In the deepening silence of approaching sleep, we begin to understand that the Confederation's greatest achievement was not its technologies or its cities or even its expanded states of consciousness, but something far more subtle and profound, the recognition that every being, every culture, every moment of existence carries within it the complete blueprint for awakening. The teachers who guided that civilization from the shadows of prehistory didn't impose their wisdom from without, but rather created conditions where the inherent intelligence of consciousness itself could flower naturally, like seeds that had been waiting countless eons for the perfect soil and season. This recognition transforms our understanding of what it means to preserve ancient wisdom. The libraries of Nalanda that never burned, the contemplative traditions that continued unbroken across millennia, the mathematical and astronomical insights that accumulated like layers of sediment in the depths of collective understanding. These were not merely collections of information, but living ecosystems of consciousness, environments where the eternal principles that govern the awakening of awareness could be explored, refined, and transmitted not just through words and symbols, but through the direct communion of awakened hearts and minds. As we drift deeper into the embrace of night, carried by the same currents that once bore the ships of that great confederation across oceans both literal and metaphorical, we sense something stirring in the depths of our own awareness. The same intelligence that could have guided ancient India through unbroken centuries of flowering lives within us, not as a distant possibility or theoretical potential, but as the very essence of what we are. The cosmic consciousness that built those responsive cities and healing temples, that developed technologies indistinguishable from miracles and educational systems that transmitted understanding directly from soul to soul. This same awareness looks out through our eyes in this very moment, dreams our dreams, and awakens through our awakening. The mountain sanctuaries where contemplatives touch the source of all knowledge become symbols now of the heights that consciousness can reach when it turns toward its own nature with the same systematic dedication that those ancient scholars brought to their study of the stars. The valleys where farmers worked in conscious partnership with the living earth remind us that every moment offers opportunities for such collaboration, such recognition of the intelligence that permeates all life. The urban centres where millions lived in harmony while pursuing their individual destinies point toward possibilities for human organisation that honour both diversity and unity, recognising each person as a unique note in the vast symphony of existence. But perhaps most importantly, the unbroken thread itself, that golden continuity that allowed wisdom to accumulate and consciousness to expand without the interruptions of conquest and collapse, reveals itself as something we can weave in our own lives and times, not through external circumstances which rise and fall like waves on the ocean, but through the continuity of attention, the unbroken awareness that recognizes its own unchanging nature beneath all the modifications of experience. The technologies that responded to consciousness rather than mechanical force whisper to us of capacities we already possess but have forgotten how to access. Every moment when intention manifests as reality, every instance of intuitive knowing that proves more accurate than analytical thought, every healing that occurs through the simple presence of compassionate awareness. These are not anomalies to be explained away, but glimpses of the responsive universe that those ancient practitioners learned to navigate with the skill of master mariners. The healing arts that address the very roots of suffering across multiple dimensions speak to the physician that lives within every conscious being. The innate wisdom that knows how to restore harmony not just to the body, but to the subtle patterns of thought and feeling that create our experience of reality. The educational systems that transmitted knowledge directly from mind to mind point toward the teaching function that awakens naturally when consciousness recognizes itself in another, the guru-disciple relationship that exists not between separate individuals, but as the dance of awareness with itself. As the gentle waves of sleep continue to carry us toward shores we cannot see, but somehow recognize, we understand that the greatest gift of this imagined timeline is not the vision of what might have been, but the recognition of what eternally is. The consciousness that could have guided ancient India to such magnificent flowering is the same consciousness that guides the beating of your heart, the growth of cells in your body, the movement of planets in their orbits, and the evolution of galaxies across the vast reaches of space. In the deepest hours of night, when the mind finally releases its need to understand and categorize, we may find ourselves not dreaming of that alternate world, but recognizing it as our own truest nature, the reality that exists whenever consciousness knows itself as both the dreamer and the dream, the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer that was never absent, but only waiting to be remembered. The monsoon winds that carried wisdom across imagined centuries now carry us into the depths of our own being, where every possibility remains forever alive, forever accessible to the awareness that recognizes no boundaries between what was, what is, and what might yet be. In this space of infinite potential, the India that never fell reveals itself not as a distant dream, but as the ever-present truth of consciousness itself, forever unbroken, forever flowering, forever awakening to its own limitless nature through every form it takes and every story it tells. And so we drift into sleep carried by the same cosmic currents that once bore that great civilization to heights we can barely imagine, knowing that we carry within us the same potential for awakening, the same capacity for harmony, the same infinite creativity that could transform any timeline into a golden age whenever consciousness remembers its own true nature, and chooses to express itself through love rather than fear, through unity rather than separation, through the recognition that we are not separate beings struggling for survival in an indifferent universe, but expressions of the universe itself, forever engaged in the sacred work of knowing and expressing its own infinite, luminous, ever-awakening heart. Sleep now, dear listener, and dream the dreams that consciousness dreams when it remembers what it has always been, not bound by history or limited by circumstance, but free to explore its own boundless nature through every experience, every possibility, every moment of existence that unfolds like flowers in the garden of eternity, where the India that never fell lives on not as memory or imagination, but as the eternal truth of what we are and have always been, awaiting only our recognition to transform every timeline into paradise, every moment into awakening, every breath into a celebration of the infinite consciousness that dreams all worlds into being and loves them all into remembering their source.